There we go. All right. As I mentioned in the central chat room, I am formerly with the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation. I recently retired last fall, but I've been fortunate to work on this project that involved folks from all across the United States. I'm one of two co-team leads on this ITRC project. Ben Holcomb of the Utah Division of Water Quality is the second, and we've been supported by Sherry Basinger of Simbella Consulting with ITRC as well. So ITRC, or Interstate Technology and Regulatory Council, is a state-led coalition. Its goal is to share innovative technologies and get the states comfortable with using innovative technologies. They want to incorporate good science into state practices, and in doing so, it's creating a network of technical experts across the country that are available to work with one another to produce these guidance documents. And you can see the circular picture here on the screen. We have lots of partners within ITRC. Ecos Eros is the overseeing entity, but they're participants from the federal government, from state government, public and tribal stakeholders, industry, academia. And funding comes from the EPA, Department of Defense, Department of Energy, and private donations as well. So trying to draw in lots of expertise across the country. The team that created the guidance document that is available now, and it was released on Friday between 2019 and 2020, we had roughly 300 participants. The map there on the bottom of the screen, the dark red color indicates the states where we had state staff or others participating. And again, we had, not in addition to state, we had regional and municipal folks, we had academia, we had folks from the federal agencies, some industry participants, lake association participants, and other nonprofit organizations as well. So a pretty big team drawing on lots of expertise from a lot of different regions around the country. ITRC works on a consensus-driven process. At the end, the document that's created should have buy-in completely from the entire team. So the team is responsible for outlining the document goals. They break into writing groups. There are monthly team meetings that are conducted primarily through Zoom or another online forum. There are 2 in-person meetings each year when COVID allows. And between those interactions, then the writing groups are doing the technical work that will produce that written document. A draft document goes out for review. To folks like EPA, to Department of Defense, to others that the team members feel would provide good review. And then those comments are taken back to the writing groups. They respond to them, adapt the document as necessary, and then a final document is made available to the public. And as I mentioned, we are at that point. The team has released the guidance document. I'll provide that link later on. I'll put it in the chat as well so that you can get to it directly. But the key elements of the guidance are shown here on the screen. We have an introduction to cyanobacteria. We cover monitoring. We talk about communication and response. We talk about in-lake management, nutrient management, and then we have a chapter focused on recommendations. And the rest of my presentation will walk you through the guidance document and share some of the things that we've put into it. So the third section, the introduction to cyanobacteria, really focuses on summarizing the current knowledge about cyanobacteria. We talk about health impacts, both to people and animals. We talk about environmental impacts, and we do our best to summarize available information on economic impacts, which, as you can imagine, can be pretty big for some locations. We also cover environmental interactions or environmental triggers for cyanobacteria that may offer control or management options, especially those that are relevant in the later chapters of the document that are focused on the in-lake management or nutrient management. We make sure in the introduction, too, to talk about how to create a cyanobacteria management plan. Many lakes have existing historical data that's really important. We talk about the need to work with partners and stakeholders, both because that can leverage your efficiency and perhaps bring in funding and support that you didn't know you had in your watershed. We talk about how you can identify the strategies and then point you throughout to resources. There are already lots of resources online that talk about building management plans, and there are lots of management plans out there for you to review and find the pieces that work for you. Section 4 is focused on monitoring, particularly those measures that are focused on cyanobacteria or cyanotoxins. Basically, these methods tell you what kind, how much, when, and where. You also can choose to monitor for other water quality parameters, and we talk about that as well. If you want to piggyback onto your cyanobacteria program, nutrient monitoring or other things, you can build all of those things into a monitoring plan. These are the monitoring methods that we cover in our cyanobacteria document. We have 6 for cyanobacteria themselves and 6 for cyanotoxins. They're all discussed using a single set of criteria so that you can easily compare them. There's an individual section on each of these methods that walks through how it works and again provides resources sharing where people around the country are using them. The table that you see here on the right side of the screen, that's the list of the criteria for the cyanobacteria methods. And again, we provide photographs when we can. We talk about advantages and disadvantages, and then again, really point you to those resources and examples so that you can see how other folks are using this information or using these methods to get the data that they wish to have for cyanobacteria. We built what we call a monitoring method selection tool. It takes those criteria out of the document and makes it so that you can make a short list, if you will. I think we have the 12 methods, but if you want to get it down to a smaller group of methods, you can use these criteria here, check and uncheck the boxes, and that will shrink that number down, and then the data is returned about each of the methods using the criteria here that you see at the bottom of the screen. So, for example, if you're looking at cyanobacteria methods that have a rapid turnaround time, for example, you would get this short list of methods. The green circle indicates the method will work for that criterion, and the red indicates that it will not. So you can see we have a cyanobacteria column here. This first PA refers to presence absence. All 4 of those circles are green. All 4 of those methods will get you that information. But the ID, the ability to distinguish between a microcystis and a selenospomopsin, for example, none of those methods can provide that information. So very quickly, we try and color code all of the criteria information that we share in more detail in the document. We try and do through the tool here. And then these links here in blue, they literally are links to the section in the document. So if one of these methods is one that you find to be interesting, then you can go directly to it without having to try and find your way through the navigational menu on the side of the web page. So section 4, the monitoring chapter also includes a discussion of field methods. There are lots of different ways that you can fill a bottle or a sample container to collect cyanobacteria. So it's important to think about the data that you're trying to collect and then choose a method that will actually enable you to get that data. And we talk about that. Those of you that are involved in cyanobacteria monitoring know that it's pretty easy to get a monitoring program. That's the Cadillac of cyanobacteria monitoring programs, but it also costs you a lot of money sometimes to do that. So we walk through how you can manage costs and resources, but still continue to support either your cyanobacteria response plan or your cyanobacteria management plan. I think one thing that this group will find really useful is what we have in Appendix A. We call it our visual guide to common cyanobacteria. It includes images of common cyanobacteria, both from the field view, so basically what you would see if you were walking along the shoreline or in a boat, and then the microscopic images of that particular organism associated with that particular bloom. And then when you get into looking at those, for those of you that are into microscopy, there's a description of what it looks like underneath the microscope. We talk about what secondary compounds there may have, and then a little bit more on what it looks like in the water. We also include images of things that are commonly mistaken for cyanobacteria, which is really important, again, when we're working with folks that might not be familiar with this. And I want to call out Anne St. Amand of Phycotech, because it's her photographs, right, that she's been working with folks across the state to identify, or across the country to identify cyanobacteria blooms for many years. So many of the photographs that you see in our visual guide are from Anne. And again, it's something I think you'll find interesting and very useful. So I hope you'll take a look at it. We have a chapter, section 5, focused on communication and response. We talk about what the things are that we think are important to be doing during a cyanobacteria event and the kinds of things that you can do later. It touches on all sorts of aspects that are covered in greater detail in the rest of the document, anything from field sampling right on to data management. But basically, it's helping you build a communication or response plan that again, meets your needs and meets the needs of the public that needs to hear the information you have to share about cyanobacteria. We really recommend that you have a plan before blooms become an issue, but we know that's not always possible, but it is something to be thinking about. It's really important also to review your communication and response plans each year. Check in with your stakeholders that you've gotten information with, check in with the public that's gotten information from you, and find out what worked and what didn't. And then you have opportunities before the next season to update and change as much as possible. And throughout, just like the rest of the document, we're providing resources and examples so that you can actually go to individual states or individual lake associations and see how they do things. And hopefully you'll find something that works for you as well. Section 6, the in-lake management and control chapter, was actually the seed kernel that started this guidance document from the very beginning. There are just so many different options out there that are proposed as cyanobacteria management tools in the water. For example, you see the photo here of barley straw. So our focus was to look at all of these different options that we could find in the peer-reviewed literature or in an otherwise independently reviewed article or white paper. Review those using a set of criteria and then rank them, basically. So we created a tool, again, to help you do that. Each of the criteria that we use to evaluate all of these different in-lake management approaches are in this tool, and you select or check or uncheck the box to get a short list of what might be there. So in this case, if you're looking at an intervention strategy, something that will actually take care of a bloom that's active on your pond right now, with all of these different criteria, this is the short list of strategies that might be returned by that combination. And when you click on the link, it takes you directly to that specific practice and information about it. We've organized all of those in what we call fact sheets. Each fact sheet has a technical overview of how the in-lake management approach works, talks a little bit about its effectiveness, its advantages and limitations, estimated costs when we can get them, and then again shares examples of where it's been put in use, and then has a reference list as well. So any reference that's available in the fact sheet, you also can see and look at when you'd like to. And all of these are individually available. You can download a PDF from each of the separate fact sheets. No guidance document talking about cyanobacteria is complete without talking about nutrient management. So we have section 7 focused on that. It's not that we haven't been trying to do that all along, but nutrient management still is one of the best, it is the best long-term option for management of cyanobacteria in the long run. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. We're really pointing you to all of the resources that we could find across the country where folks have had success, and also talking about where they haven't had success with some of these methods so that you can do the homework and decide what might work for you. We cover most of the major land use sources. We talk about structural, non-structural, and regulatory approaches that are used across the country. Again, we point you to those resources and examples, and then we've put together this interactive graphic. So you can click on the red dots here, and when you do, those different methods pop up with a direct link to the text itself, so that you can dive right into that nutrient source discussion. And finally, we have a section on recommendations. You put so many people in a room together, not only do you learn what everyone knows, we also learn what we don't know. So our recommendations are focused on things that we feel would be really helpful in the management and control of cyanobacteria across the country. And hopefully folks will read this and take away some ideas, and we can make some progress there. We did have two overarching recommendations, really focusing on developing a common language for management and response. We found even within our group that there were nuances in some of the terms that are commonly used across the country, and that team members didn't quite always catch those nuances. So working on that common language is really key. And then also a national freshwater planning structure. The marine environment has a national planning structure, a national research structure for all of the harmful algal blooms that are happening in the marine environment. The Great Lakes, because of the large water mass and large area of water they have, they're able to piggyback onto that marine planning structure. But for those of us that are working on smaller lakes, there isn't anything like that. And that would really make available some research, perhaps some research funding, some research sharing, some in-lake management funding to really see which of these in-lake management approaches are successful. So a national freshwater planning structure would be really important. And with that, I'll just wind it up. So our guidance is online now. As I said, it was released on Friday, which was really exciting. This is the website here. I'll post it in the chat here in a minute as well. We're going to be offering a training session on the guidance document on April 29th. You can sign up to be that. And then this guidance document currently is focused very much on planktonic cyanobacteria, but there's a group of folks that has now gathered, and the ITRC team will continue for another year, and we'll be building guidance for benthic cyanobacteria. So that will hopefully be released in 2022. So I encourage you to visit the ITRC website. You can see the website link is down here. You can sign up there for our spring training. You can sign up to become a member of the benthic cyanobacteria team, but there may also be other things that you find of interest there. There's a general risk communication document that was released last summer. There's guidance for wetlands, and there's a really strong discussion and a really strong guidance document around stormwater best management practices. So you never know what you might find there. And I encourage you to head that way. And with that, I will end.